Welcome, and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. Finances, one of those things many of us try to harness and try to get a hold of so that we can improve our lives, seems to be one of those elusive things in American society today. Joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program is the founder and father of the Financial Life Planning Movement, who applies what is known as Buddhist wisdom to take an original look at the ins and outs of individual economics. We'll discover today the 7 specific states that we naturally evolve through, so our guest says, as he shares with us all the wisdom that he has gained over the 30 years that he has been practicing as a financial planner and tax advisor. He joins us here on the Beyond 50 radio program today to talk about the new book, The 7 Stages of Money Maturity. I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program today our guest, George Kender. George, thank you for joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program.
Thank you, Daniel. Nice to be here.
You know, money maturity, when it comes to money, a lot of people sometimes might even find this one of them subjects that they kind of feel embarrassed about sometimes, don't they?
Sure, yeah. The truth is that we're all struggling in one way or another around money, and so even looking at it is a challenging topic for us. Most of us have our heads down, and we're just trying to get the job done and do what we can if we're a saver, and hope for the best.
Now, it's interesting because a lot of times we pick up our money knowledge, usually from our parents. And then when we start getting out there and making mistakes, well, probably some of that we can certainly point our fingers to ourselves. But what's going on there that we could actually make better decisions when it comes to money and money management and the way that we approach the idea of money?
Well, I think it has much more to do with us than with our parents, and much more to do with us than with the newspapers, because a lot of what we, or the web, because a lot of what we do now to pick up knowledge is we surf the web. Financial planning or money or financial advice is meant to be a way of delivering into consumers' lives freedom, fundamentally. Money. The reason that money is problematic for us and becomes challenging or difficult is because we know that if we had more money, we could do what we want to do. And so money represents, from the very beginning, it represents a kind of freedom to us. What happens is that we have that focus so narrowly on money that we forget what the freedom is that it represents. So the first thing that we need to do is look at who it is that we really want to be, what it is that we really want to become. And those are more profound questions than just simply writing down what you'd do if you won the lottery. And so one of the things that the life planning movement does, and this is a movement that's in 30 countries with thousands of advisors all over the world, one of the things that it does is that it asks deep and significant questions of each consumer, whether they're coming to a financial advisor or they're going to some of the free websites that are out there. So it asks profound questions, and those are the questions that we need to start with in order to then figure out what is it that we want money to deliver.
Now, it's understood that you're considered to be someone who would be the father of life planning. What is the difference from that between that and financial planning?
Well, there are a whole bunch of different designations in the world of finance. You could be an investment manager, you can be a financial advisor, you can be a financial planner. If you look at surveys of trust levels across society, you'll find that financial advisors have about the same trust level as politicians do. And so there's a big question in the consumer's mind as to whether financial advisors are really on their side, are really thinking about them. What we do in life planning, one of the reasons that we have designed the life planning movement is because one of the terms in the financial advice movement right now is fiduciary. That in the fiduciary aspect of financial services, we are meant to put the client's interests first. That's not the case with most financial advisors. Most financial advisors are not fiduciaries. In life planning, as we think about what it is to be a fiduciary and what it is to put the client first, what we're looking at is first looking at who the client is and who they really want to become, who they want to be. So rather than having the client come in rather untrustworthy, untrusting us, and looking at us as untrustworthy, we try to create a bond of trust with the client about who they really want to be, as opposed to them coming in and just asking about their 401k or their pension at work. One of the things we would want to know is whether they should even be in the job that they're in, whether they like doing what they're doing. And what we want to do is to aim to deliver the clients into the freedom that they'd like to experience, as opposed to just answer informational questions that you could Google.
It seems so interesting when you say that a lot of times financial planners don't really have the client's best interest at heart. Describe that a little bit, why that is.
Well, it all comes down to the product companies. I mean, the financial services in some ways began for consumers with life insurance, and it was a great innovation in society because of men dying, and at that time women had very little earning capacity, and so to have life insurance was a fantastic thing for the family. But it was a product, and then over time through the 20th century, there's been this play back and forth between, are you an advisor or are you really a product seller? Banks are product manufacturers. Insurance companies are product manufacturers. Brokerage firms are product sellers. But what is really on the consumer side is not someone who's selling you something, but someone who's really listening to who you are and who has your interests first. Who do you really want to become, and how do we make money make that happen? And so that's where financial planning has been part of that revolution, particularly the fee-only financial planning movement that doesn't take commissions, but works either on an hourly basis or on a retainer or on what's called an assets under management basis. The fiduciary movement has been part of this, and the life planning movement has been part of it.
Now, I'm curious, is there really a core problem that people may have with money?
Well, I think that the problem with money is, as I said, it really means a huge amount to us. But to each of us, it means something very different. So, for instance, you will have very different goals and ideals and aspirations than I might have, for instance. But each of us knows that what we've worked hard for, what we've saved, what we've possibly inherited, the financial package we've put together for ourselves over our lifetime is critical to the delivery of those aspirations. So what happens is that in a world that is untrustworthy around money, and much financial advice is untrustworthy around money, we get kind of neurotic. We act in ways where we think we know what's best, because it's hard for us to find someone out there who really is on our side and who really both knows us and knows the world of money. So the problem, so we go through all the same kind of things that we do with anything else that we're not ease with, not comfortable with, not confident with. So we have emotional reactions around money that can be unfortunate. We can make bad decisions around money as a consequence.
Now, I find it interesting, too, when it comes to money, how strong people have an emotional attachment to it.
Yeah.
And you got to wonder, how a person can shift from that to where they have more meaning related to the money that they earn.
We in the life planning movement, there's a free website that consumers can go to that you can do your own life plan. It's called lifeplanningforyou.com. And whether on that website or in the offices of life planners or in several books, including the 7 Stages book that you mentioned, there are a series of questions. They're goal-oriented and they're meaning-oriented. And the 3 that I'm most famous for and that most life planners use all over the world are a progression. There are three simple questions. The first one is just as if you won the lottery. If you had all the money that you needed for the rest of your life, what would you do with it? And in that you play out all of your money fantasies of what freedom might look like. But the second question and the third question go deeper. The second question is, if you only had 5 to 10 years left to live, if you suddenly discovered that a medical condition comes up, you're going to be as healthy as you are right now, but still 5 to 10 years left to live. How would that shift your perspective on who you want to be and what you want to accomplish? And you can see that would narrow the focus some and bring up what's really much more important. And then the third question is even more reflective. And it starts off the same way. You go to the doctor, and the doctor gives you really terrible news, and that is that you've had a terrible illness and you have only 24 hours left to live. And the question is not what would you do with your time. The question is, reflecting on your life, what did you miss? Who did you not get to be? What did you not get to do? So it's a very reflective question about what would have been really important to have accomplished if you'd had just a bit more life. And that question tends to be the question that drives a life plan. And it's very meaningful. It often has family in it. It often has values or spirit or some spiritual aspect to it. It often has creativity in it. It often has community, and it often has something about the environment or a sense of place. So those are the kind of the core areas that we seek out. The delight of our life, the pleasure of our life, but also the meaning of our life. And a life planner will focus on delivering whatever it is that you might fear missing into your life to make sure it happens.
Now, when it comes to someone who might be looking for someone that has the kind of skill or at least ability to share what it is that you do, how do they go about finding someone who might be competent in that arena?
Yeah, I think the best. Well, first of all, there are people out there who do coaching. There's financial planners who have certified financial planning designations. There's an organization of fee-only planners, several of them, including NAPFA and Garrett Planning Network. But I think the best approach would actually be to get on. We've got a website at kinderinstitute.com that has a list of, I think now, about 2,500 advisors all over the world who have studied with us and therefore know and are dedicated to this kind of.
Now, what if somebody decided that they wanted to, say, tackle this on their own? What kind of things would you share with them that they would be able to do this?
Great. The book you mentioned at first, the 7 Stages of Money Maturity, has actually been around for a while and launched the movement in a way. And it, in many ways, has a psychological aspect to it. So it's a wonderful place to begin. But if you want to go right to it, probably the best book is a book called Life Planning for You. And that book has also a free consumer website where you can do the life plan yourself. Usually what happens is we're working on the life planning aspect of it. We can do a lot of that ourselves. But if our life requires some complexity to the financing of it all, then I think calling in someone who's a certified financial planner, a fee-only planner, someone not affiliated with a product company, who also does life planning would be a very good idea.
It just seems like there's, so much to this on the one hand, but it's also about getting focused on the other. And, I was kind of curious if in the 7 strategies of money maturity, let's talk about what those stages are and why they're important.
Yeah, and this is very much has a psychology to it. The 7 stages are broken into 3 segments, 3 phases. The first is childhood, the second is adulthood, and the third is what we call maturity or awakening. And in the childhood phase, there are what we call innocence and pain. And innocence represents the kind of innocent messages, the naive messages that we have around money, the messages that we got from our families, or that we just developed as we grew up. And sometimes they've been very useful to us, but sometimes they get us in trouble. Any simplistic approach to money is going to have some value and at the same time problematic. So what happens, so some of those messages might be always save for a rainy day, or a conflicting message might be live for the moment. And so that many of these messages have opposite messages. And then what happens is around pain, we all have known pain around money. We've all not gotten the job that we wanted, or not gotten the raise that we wanted, or we've suffered investment losses. We all went through the banking crisis of 2008 and suffered mortgage loss, home value loss, all of those kinds of things. So there's pain that we experience. And in the book, it talks about the pain in terms of emotions and ultimately in terms of emotional maturity. So the more that we are at ease around difficult feelings, the more we can handle money in a very mature way. Moving into the skills of adulthood, the stages of adulthood, there are 3 of them. The first is knowledge, and the second is understanding, and the third is vigor or vitality. And knowledge is what a financial planner might bring to you. It involves your goals and your saving and your investing and all the different planning elements that might go into having real success around finances in your life. And then the next area above knowledge is understanding. And understanding is actually a place of transformation where you transform the painful money dilemmas that you might find yourself in by developing ease in the midst of the difficult feelings that are there. So as I say, it's really the gem of the model, but it's a place of emotional intelligence, the development of it, and then which is clearly essential when we look at how many ways we mess up around money. And then the third is vigor or vitality, the third stage of adulthood. That's the 5th stage overall, and in it we bring tremendous energy. One of the things that life planning does, because it focuses on our true aspirations, is that it generates this kind of entrepreneurial spirit inside of people, whether it's involved with their family or their business or really any aspect of their life. So vigor and vitality is extremely important when it comes to a healthy relationship with money. And then the final 2 are in the stage that we call awakening or maturity, and they come as a consequence of the development of knowledge, understanding, and vigor, the adult skills. And those final 2 are vision and aloha. Aloha is is something in Hawaii. It's a wonderful quality in Hawaii that many people think of. It means hello and goodbye in the guidebooks, but what it really means is the passing of a blessing from one person to another. So vision has to do with your community, seeing what's needed in your community, and you have all of the skills of adulthood to reach out and help transform and change and contribute to your community. And aloha is this personal spirit of generosity or graciousness of being. Regard to money and usually is one-on-one.
Now, when it comes to retirement, people sometimes perhaps don't feel that they're as prepared, or maybe they feel that they're maybe over-prepared. But is there an easy way for people to discover if there's a way that they're prepared for retirement?
Well, there's a wonderfully simple formula that I call BERT, B-E-R-T, and what it stands for is the back of the envelope retirement tool. And you can find it either in the Life Planning for You book or on the lifeplanningforyou.com website. And it is based on what's sometimes called the 4% solution. There is a long history of studies of how much money, how much savings you need for retirement. And what the formula does is it basically takes the Social Security that you might be expecting and any kind of non-investment income. Might have rental income, or you might have a trust of some sort. There may be a pension that's coming to you. So it takes all of those sources of income and adds them up, and then it takes whatever investments you're likely to have at the moment of retirement, and it simply multiplies that amount by 4%. Some people multiply it by 2.5% to 3%. Some people multiply it by 5.5%. So there's a range there of what people think you can get over the long run from a healthy mix of stocks and bonds. Most people go with the 4% figure, but there's some debate about it. So if you add all of that up, you can see what it is that you will have reasonably safely through retirement, and it's very helpful. So that figure that you multiply by 4%, in a way, that's a target that you might be aiming at if you're in your younger days of saving and investing.
Wow, it's just amazing to think about all this. And I know, as you were talking earlier, when you say that people tend to, almost money's, as much as we're emotionally attached to it, almost have afterthoughts, or we kind of mindlessly go about how we think and we use that. And you talk a lot about mindfulness in your book. Tell us exactly what that means.
Well, mindfulness is a huge topic. If you Google it now, you'll find thousands of articles, thousands of scientific articles, and there are many different ways that people are using the term. Some of it is just simply paying attention to what you're in money terms. It would include just simply paying attention to your budget, to saving, to investing. But in most of the articles, what they're describing is it's a skill. It's a mental skill. It's a brain skill. It's a mind skill of that develops greater focus, greater concentration, less stress, less anxiety, more of a sense of ease, more emotional intelligence, more of a sense of purpose. So it has tremendous benefits in a huge variety of ways, and they're measuring how the brain is impacted on all of these things. And it's a simple meditative kind of technique. It's been it's the essence of many spiritual practices, whether Christian or Buddhist and almost all meditative spiritual traditions have some contemplative practice, and so mindfulness largely is used as a term, and it's used in a secular way rather than in a spiritual or religious context. It's used to take the essence of many of those practices to see, to begin to give a definition and a description of how consumers can develop, or ordinary citizens can develop, regardless of your tradition, can develop those skills to enhance your focus, to relax more, to be clearer, and all of that. And it's largely an internal practice. Mostly people do it by closing their eyes and watching the breath, and so instead of letting your mind go on what you have to do later today or what you did yesterday, and looking at what you're excited about and what you're regretting, and just going through your normal mind field of topics. This gives you great rest because you're focusing on something that's just in your body, very simple, and so it's really quite a wonderful thing. There are many apps and books written about it, and as I say, you can Google and find out a tremendous amount about it, and many people have tapes that you can just listen to.
What do you think has been one of the biggest emotions that you've had to deal with consistently with people when it comes to money?
Well, it's interesting that you ask that, Daniel. As a financial advisor, what most financial advisors are trained in investments, of course, trained in retirement skills, trained in risk management or insurance. They're trained in estate planning. They're trained in a bunch of different skill sets around money. But they're given very little training in regard to the people that come in to see them. And the truth is that when a client comes in to see an advisor for the first time, there is a universal feeling that every single one of them is feeling, and that is anxiety. And they're anxious, and they're anxious because, first of all, they probably don't know you, so they're anxious about who is this person that I'm coming to see about what is perhaps the most important secular set of thinking and skills that I want to have and develop and be on my side. Who is this person that I'm trusting? And should I be trusting them? So there's anxiety. It's kind of filled with that, filled in that meeting. And so the advisor's skill is to be at ease themselves, so that their calm and ease with anxiety is not going to impact. It's going to lessen the anxiety that the client has.
I would suppose, too, that when you decide to go in this direction where you're approaching a professional to help maybe get you in the direction you'd like to go, I would think that sometimes people would feel shame because they feel they should have managed their money differently than they had.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm sure that you experience that quite a bit with people. And it's interesting when you talk about, for instance, we had this financial collapse back in 2008 that's certainly been going on for a few years, and that people may have been caught in the web of that sort of destruction, if you will, and you think, well, look, you know, somebody else played by a set of rules, and this was the outcome, and it affected a lot of people. And you think to yourself, you know, how do you really have any kind of feelings such as shame when maybe you failed in that arena, and it wasn't entirely your fault?
Yeah, exactly. Daniel, very insightful. That's it is. When we deliver a life plan to someone, there's a moment that we call lighting the torch. And what that means is we take things like the 3 questions I mentioned earlier, and we present to the client what we've heard from them, but what we think would represent an aspirational mix that would profoundly excite them, that would energize them. So they feel both deeply moved and at the same time energized. And that's often the first response to the life plan. But very quickly thereafter, there is very often a touch of shame, and sometimes deep shame, remorse, regret. And often, as you say, it's not through their own fault, but sometimes it is. Sometimes they've overlooked something that was important. For instance, in their life plan might be to heal the wound that separated them from their long-lost sister, just as an example. And there's some shame in not having taken care of that and made that whole. So almost always in a life plan that has profound meaning, that has real aspirations, and not just superficial ones around money, there are things that we haven't done that in some way we know that if we'd just been slightly better than we were, we would have done it. And so that shame comes up, as well as the shame, as you say, that can come from circumstances way beyond our control, where we thought we'd really saved, we thought we'd really done it well, say with the development of equity in our home, and that was our retirement, and then this terrible crisis happens that that is not our fault. It's clearly the fault of a mix of government and the financial services industry. But in some small way, we might have contributed because we could have perhaps have been more diversified than we were. But we feel terrible shame because we'd counted on that money. So again, the skill of understanding in the 7 stages and the skills that a life planner is trained with, to be able to be in that room with the person who's really excited about their life plan, and at the same time, periodically will touch into these feelings of shame or guilt or sorrow, and for the life planner to be able to be there and be kindly, be compassionate, be empathic, so valuable to have that in a financial advisor who also we know is really on our side to put the money together and is not just trying to sell a product to us.
I also find, too, that if a person can take personal responsibility regardless, just the fact is you're in that position. Whether it was your fault or someone else would just say, I'm here, I found myself here, and I want to find myself going in a better direction, a different direction. That's kind of the first step. Instead of making up a big story that absolves you from responsibility,
right.
You say, I did this, and so what? I screwed up. Let's go ahead and move forward. The world is a more forgiving place than we tend to give it credit for.
yeah, and that acknowledgement is a great thing for us because it builds our own maturity. It builds our self-knowledge. It has greater integrity to it than just kind of blowing it off.
Yeah, I remembered finding myself, this was many years ago, in that situation where you're making up the excuses for why you are where you are financially. And I finally decided, it seems to take a lot of energy for me to come up with this story here. Some of it's my fault, so I'm saying, but most of it seems to be everything else, and I've got this big story that basically puts me in a position where I'm a victim. When I changed that story and I simplified it, not only did I feel better, but, I also felt more empowered that I was doing something about it.
Yeah, fantastic. Absolutely. And in the 7 stages, we call that kind of recognition and the vitality of that, the stage of vigor. And it's very interesting. The stage of vigor has as its dark side, the side where the vigor hasn't been accessed really. It has shame can be in there, but there can be dependencies in there. It has a lot of elements similar to the codependency, Alcoholics Anonymous kind of explorations, where we've not stepped out and owned that we have responsibility here, and that we can in fact make a huge difference. So one of the things that happens in a great maturing around money is taking on that vigor and that vitality and making things.
Absolutely, and it's really empowering, as I said, when you step in that direction and realize, I've held myself back for this long. I can't believe it took me so long to go this new direction, and it feels so much better. Now, where's a website people can find out more about your work and how they can go about getting the book?
Yeah, we actually have 3 websites, and so I'm kind of wondering which one to give you. There's one that I've just put up called georgekinder.com, very simply, and it is mine as a thought leader. I'm expanding my work to actually my next book is going to be on civilization, and very very topical given what we've all experienced in the political world this year. So georgekinder.com is a good way to get a lot of different aspects of what I've done and the work that I do. If you're looking explicitly for the doing life planning, then of course Life Planning for You is .com is the website, and if you're looking for an advisor, then it would be kinderinstitute.com. But usually from one of those websites you can find the others.
Oh, very good. So kinderinstitute.com is one website we can certainly give people, and there were the others, and as you said, we can branch out from there. So, and the book is The 7 Stages of Money Maturity. George, thank you so much for joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program and sharing this very valuable information for our listeners.
Great. Wonderful, Daniel. Thank you so much for inviting me.
You betcha. We want to thank you, the listeners out there, for tuning in. You can take more personal responsibility by discovering what we're up to at Beyond50Radio.com. That is the number 50. Sign up for our weekly e-newsletter and stay up to date with what's going on in our community as well as upcoming programming. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Beyond50Radio as well. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for tuning in. This is the Beyond 50 radio program, and remember, live your day past halfway.